Jacques Todicheenes was born in 1874. He is Pearl and Ryder Todicheenes' first child. As the eldest, Jacques had a lot of responsibilities. With his mother expecting his sixth sibling and taking care of his little sisters, he had a lot of chores to do. He took his role very seriously and was very mature for his age. He was close with all of his siblings, but he was closest with his brother Abraham. They were the only boys, so they were always together. They would play every day with their sister Martha. Jacques would also play with his best friend. Her name was Natalie. She would often come over to play with him and his siblings. She'd sometimes stay to hear the family tell stories by the fire. The family was incredibly close. When he wasn't playing or doing chores around the house, Jacques would go fishing with his father. They would go fishing in various locations to find the best fish. It was their favorite pastime. They would never stay out too late. Ryder told him it was because the beast came out at night. He promised to tell him more when he was old enough. For now, it was safer to fish during the day and be home before dark. One afternoon after a busy morning, the two of them went out to go fishing. They were having trouble catching fish, so Ryder had gone to grab some more bait. Jacques noticed that Abraham had followed them out. He was surprised to see his little brother come all that way without being noticed. Abraham said that he wanted to go fishing with them. Even though he was too young, Jacques didn't think it'd hurt to teach him. So they went to find their father to grab an extra fishing rod. They walked and walked. Jacques no longer knew where they were. He yelled out for his father in hopes that he would hear him. But as it started to get dark, it was clear Ryder wasn't coming. Jacques had set up a fire to keep them warm. He also cooked the fish he caught so they wouldn't starve. The fire had eventually died out. He felt something watching them. When he saw it, he was mortified. He took Abraham's hand and they ran for their lives. But the beast caught up and attacked Jacque. Abraham watched in fear as his big brother was torn apart. Behind him approached another beast. It snatched Abraham and left the scene. It was then that Ryder finally found them. He managed to scare off the beast before it could cause any more harm. Ryder ran to his injured son. He grabbed him, then rushed home. Jacques would luckily survive his injuries, but he was permanently disfigured. His family was relieved to have him back, but Ryder finally realized Abraham was gone. Pearl had assumed that Ryder had taken him, but he had no clue Abraham was out there. With Jacque safe, Ryder would go back out to search for Abraham. After seeing Jacque, Pearl worried that it would already be too late for him. It reminded her of the night she lost her brother all over again. But Ryder wasn't going to give up. Jacque was bedridden for several months recovering. Every morning Ryder would search for Abraham and wouldn't come back until sunset. But no matter his effort, Abraham would never be found. When Jacque fully recovered, he was afraid of his own reflection. He didn't remember much, but he couldn't imagine what Abraham had to witness. Despite his looks, he wasn't treated any different. His father taught him to embrace his looks. Pearl would comfort Jacque whenever he spoke about his brother. She didn't want him to blame himself for what happened. Years had gone by and the family lost hope in finding little Abraham. Instead of hoping he would be found, they mourned him. But Jacques refused to give up on him. He believed Abraham was out there somewhere. His father taught him how to protect himself in case he crossed paths with the beast again. He was a good shot. Jacque couldn't stop replaying that night in his head. Even though he did what he could to protect Abraham, he wondered what he could have done differently. Now old enough to do things on his own, he would go out to search for his brother. It hurt his parents to see him hold on, but they figured it as his way of coping. Ryder would tell him that he searched every inch of those woods for Abraham and never found a trace. But Jacque refused to believe his brother was gone, and he hated how his father gave up on finding him. He would vent to Natalie about his frustrations. She always listened. She went with him to the woods where he was attacked. Jacque was looking for answers, but she felt uneasy there. While looking around, they stumbled across a young woman laying lifeless in the grass. The woman was covered in blood and claw marks. They ran to help her. Jacque saw that she was barely alive. Natalie knew whatever harmed her couldn't be far. She looked to see if they were being watched. She saw something strange in the distance. She screamed and pulled Jacque to his feet. They ran for their lives, leaving the girl behind. They ran all the way out of the woods and back to the house. When they were finally safe, Jacque yelled at her for making him leave the girl for dead. Natalie argued that they would have been killed if they stayed any longer. Jacque told her that he had it handled. Their arguing caught his parents' attention. Natalie told them where they had been and what happened. They were not happy to hear it. Having had enough, Ryder forbid him from searching for his brother. On top of that, they were sending him to live with his grandparents so they could keep a close eye on him. Jacque was infuriated with all of them, but there was nothing he could do against it. He would no longer speak to Natalie after she got him in trouble. When he was brought to his grandparents' house, there were many rules. He wasn't allowed out of the house without supervision, and going into the woods was off limits. By sunset, all the doors were locked. No one was allowed out after dark. Jacque would be up in his room, loathing every second he was there. In the mornings, his grandma had him cook with her before he went out. While he hated that his grandfather had to accompany him, it brought them closer. Jacque would vent to him about how unfair it all was. Then Ona would explain to him that there was a reason things were the way they were. He told him about all the family that was lost to the creatures of the woods, and how it tore them apart. Jacque had no idea that they had been through so much. After hearing of his family's history, Jacque understood that Abraham most likely didn't survive that night. It was a hard reality for him to face, and he would never get over it. His grandparents being there made it easier to cope. Even though he couldn't help his brother, he wanted to be able to help others. In 1885, his grandmother passed away. Shortly after her death, Jacque moved into his own place and became a cop. He would patrol and protect the town during the day. But at night, he found himself roaming the woods in search for the beast. On his days off, he would spend time with his grandfather. They remained close until Ona passed in 1890. After his death, Jacque reconnected with his parents. He and his father would go fishing like they used to. When he wasn't with his family, he would read. One day at the library, he crossed paths with his old friend Natalie. They started talking and reconciled from their last exchange. Despite the years that passed, their bond hadn't changed. They started spending a lot of time together. Then love blossomed between them. Jacque spoiled her with love every day. In 1904, they were married. His parents were proud of him. In 1909, Jacque and Natalie had their first child, a son they named Abraham, after Jacque's lost brother. Then in 1911, they had another son. They named him Montgomery. Now, with children of his own, Jacque was determined to kill the evil that lurked in the woods. He didn't want it to hurt anyone else, ever again.